The Velthari had watched Earth for almost 100 years before they decided to make contact. They were an old species, older than most in the galaxy. Their empire spread across 3 arms of the Milky Way, and they had seen thousands of different species rise and fall. They kept records of every intelligent race they found. They studied them. They ranked them. They decided which ones were useful and which ones were not. When they looked at humans, they saw predators. The signs were clear: forward-facing eyes for hunting, teeth designed to tear meat, a history filled with war and conquest. But the Velthari were not worried. They had dealt with predator species before. The trick was simple. You had to catch them while they were still young, before they learned how dangerous they could be. Humans, the Velthari decided, were cubs. Dangerous in what they might become, but easy to control right now. Like young animals who growled and showed their teeth but did not yet know how to bite. Ambassador Kethral stood on the observation deck of his diplomatic ship and watched the human shuttle approach. His skin was a pale blue color that shifted slightly when he felt strong emotions. Right now, it was calm and steady. He had done this many times before with many different species. He knew exactly how this meeting would go. "They are bringing weapons," said Sub-Ambassador Yeleth. She stood beside him, her own skin flickering with a nervous light. She was younger than Kethral and had less experience with primitive species. "Of course they are," Kethral replied. His voice was calm and a little bit bored. "All predators carry their toys. Let them have their comfort objects. It makes them feel safe. It makes them easier to manage." The human shuttle docked with a soft clunk. The airlock opened, and 5 humans walked through. Kethral studied them carefully. They moved well, he noticed, smooth and balanced like hunters, but they smiled and nodded politely, just like the harmless species did. The leader was a woman named Catherine Moore. She had brown hair pulled back from her face and eyes the color of Earth's sky. She walked with the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly where she was and why she was there. Beside her was a man named Daniel Price. He wore a military uniform and had the look of a soldier, but he kept his hands relaxed at his sides and his expression friendly. "Ambassador Kethral," Catherine said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "Thank you for meeting with us. Earth is honored by this invitation." Kethral touched her hand briefly, as he had learned was polite among humans. Her skin was warm, much warmer than his own. Predator blood, he reminded himself. They burned hot. "The honor is ours," he said. The words were meaningless, but diplomacy required them. "Please come. We have prepared quarters for your delegation. You must be tired from your journey." He led them through the ship, pointing out various features and explaining how things worked. The humans asked questions and looked impressed by the technology around them. Kethral noticed how their eyes moved, taking in every detail. Curious creatures, humans. Always looking, always learning. The toys they carried were easy to see. Standard human weapons, small and simple. Communication devices. Medical equipment. Various electronic tools that the Velthari found almost cute in their basic design. The humans seemed very attached to these objects, checking them frequently and keeping them close. What Kethral did not notice were the less obvious things. He did not see the tiny data chips sewn into the lining of their uniforms. He did not detect the microscopic recording devices hidden inside ordinary-looking buttons. He did not know about the chemical compounds stored in hollow spaces inside their boot heels. These things were beyond what the Velthari expected from such a young species. Catherine smiled as she walked through the alien ship. She had spent years preparing for this moment. Back on Earth, teams of scientists and intelligence officers had studied every piece of information they could find about the Velthari. They knew how the aliens thought. They knew what the aliens expected, and they knew exactly what role they needed to play. Cubs, she thought to herself. They think we are cubs. That night, the human delegation gathered in their assigned quarters. The rooms were comfortable and well-designed, but Catherine knew they were being watched. Every room on this ship had hidden sensors. Every conversation was being recorded and analyzed. She did not mind. She had planned for this. "Beautiful ship," Daniel said casually, running his hand along the wall. "The Velthari really know how to build things." "They have had a long time to practice," Catherine agreed. "I am looking forward to learning from them." They talked about simple things: the journey, the food, their impressions of the Velthari. Nothing important. Nothing that would make the watchers suspicious. But under the table, Catherine's fingers moved in small, careful patterns. She tapped out a message in a code that only her team understood. It said, "Phase 1 complete. They see exactly what we want them to see." Daniel's fingers moved in response. Understood, awaiting further instructions. In the monitoring room, Velthari technicians watched the humans settle into their quarters. They saw nothing unusual. Just a group of young predators, tired from their trip, talking about unimportant things. "They seem harmless enough," one technician said to another. "They are cubs," the other replied. "Give them a few thousand years, and they might become interesting. But for now, they are just another primitive species looking for protection." They turned their attention to other matters. The humans were not worth watching closely. They were too simple, too obvious, too young to be any kind of threat. Far away on Earth, a room full of people watched the same scene through the hidden cameras in the human delegation's clothes. They saw the Velthari ship. They recorded its layout. They analyzed its technology. "They bought it," said one of the watchers. "They really think we are just stupid kids." "Good," said the director of the operation, a tired-looking man named George Palmer. "Let them keep thinking that. By the time they figure out the truth, it will be far too late." The game had begun, and the Cubs were playing for keeps. 5 years passed after first contact. To the Velthari, everything was going according to plan. To the humans, everything was going according to a very different plan. The arrangement had seemed good at the start. The Velthari offered humanity a place in their collective. This meant protection from other species. It meant trade agreements and access to new technologies. It meant that Earth would not be alone in a dangerous galaxy. In return, humans would provide workers, cultural entertainment, and access to Earth's many unique plants and animals. It sounded fair. It was not. Daniel Price had figured this out within the first year of his assignment to Velthari Prime. He was a military liaison now, which meant he lived on the alien homeworld and reported on what he saw. The job gave him access to places most humans could not go. It also gave him a clear view of how the Velthari really treated their partners. Humans were everywhere in Velthari space now. They worked in factories. They served food in restaurants. They cleaned buildings and fixed machines. They performed music and told stories for Velthari audiences who found human culture amusing. They did all the jobs that the Velthari considered beneath them. "We are not partners," Daniel said quietly one evening. He stood in his quarters with Lisa Grant, his communications officer. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had been with Daniel since the beginning of the mission. "We are servants, maybe even less than that." Lisa nodded. She understood. The Velthari were polite to humans. They did not hurt them or treat them cruelly, but they did not respect them either. To the Velthari, humans were like clever pets, useful for certain tasks, entertaining to watch, but never equals. "It gets worse," Lisa said. She kept her voice low even though their quarters were shielded from Velthari listening devices, or at least they believed the shields worked. "Have you noticed the collections?" Daniel had noticed. Over the past 3 years, the Velthari had been gathering human technology. They called it a safety protocol. They said that certain human devices were dangerous and needed to be stored properly. They said it was for everyone's protection. First, they took the weapons. All human military equipment was collected and locked away in secure facilities. The Velthari said that weapons made other species nervous. They said humans would be safer without them. Then they took the communication devices. Personal tablets, phones, anything that could send or receive signals. The Velthari provided replacements, of course. New devices that worked on Velthari networks. New devices that the Velthari could monitor and control. Then they took the tools, engineering equipment, medical scanners, even children's educational toys. Anything that the Velthari decided might be misused was collected and stored. The humans had complained at first. They had asked questions and demanded explanations. But the Velthari were patient and kind. They explained that this was normal. They explained that all new species went through this process. They explained that it was temporary, just until the humans proved they could be trusted. The complaints stopped eventually. The humans seemed to accept their situation. They handed over their toys like good little cubs and went back to their jobs. Warehouse District 7, Lisa said. Sub-level 4. That is where they keep most of it. I found the shipping records last week. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. This was exactly the information they needed. Can you get the layout? Already done. I had one of our maintenance workers map it during a routine cleaning assignment. Lisa pulled out a small device, no bigger than a button. It projected a detailed three-dimensional image of the warehouse. Security is tight but not impossible. They use electronic locks, patrol rotations every 30 minutes, and sensor grids on all entry points. They are not expecting us to try anything, Daniel observed. No, Lisa agreed. They think we gave up. They think we accepted our place. That was the key to everything. The Velthari had been conquering species for thousands of years. They had a system. They had patterns. And they had assumptions. They assumed that young species would eventually accept their lower position. They assumed that taking away technology would make a species helpless. They assumed that time would turn resistance into acceptance. They did not understand humans. Daniel thought about Catherine more. He had not seen her in person for 3 years, but they communicated regularly through channels the Velthari did not know about. She was still on Earth officially, but she had operatives everywhere. She had been building a network since the day of first contact, placing trusted people in key positions across Velthari space. The ambassador wants a full report by next week, Lisa said. She is moving to the next phase. Daniel felt his heart beat a little faster. They had been waiting for this, years of pretending to be harmless. Years of letting the Velthari take their things and push them around. Years of watching and learning and planning. What about the others? He asked. Are they ready? Lisa nodded. 17 worlds. We have people on all of them. Factory workers, servants, entertainers. Nobody important, according to the Velthari. Nobody worth watching closely. That was the beauty of it. The Velthari looked for threats among soldiers and scientists. They watched human military officers and government officials. They did not watch the cleaning staff. They did not watch the cooks and the musicians and the maintenance workers. Why would they? These were just simple laborers doing simple jobs, but those simple laborers had been busy. They had mapped Velthari facilities. They had recorded security codes. They had identified weaknesses in alien systems. They had done everything that Daniel and Catherine had asked them to do, slowly and carefully, without ever raising suspicion. The cubs had been collecting information just as carefully as the Velthari had been collecting their toys. There is one more thing, Lisa said. Her expression became serious. I intercepted a communication last night. High-level Velthari military traffic. Daniel waited. They are planning to expand the collection program. Starting next month, they want to gather what they call cultural artifacts. Books, music, Art, historical records. They say it is for preservation purposes. Daniel understood immediately. The Velthari were not trying to preserve human culture. They were trying to control it. If they held all the records, they could decide what humans remembered about their own history. They could shape how humans saw themselves. They are trying to erase us, Daniel said quietly. Not with weapons, with patience. Yes, Lisa agreed. Slowly, gently. The way you train an animal to forget it was ever wild. Daniel stood silently for a long moment. Through the window of his quarters, he could see the lights of the Velthari capital city stretching to the horizon. Millions of aliens living their lives, confident in their superiority, certain that they had everything under control. They had no idea what was coming. "Send the report to Catherine," Daniel finally said. "Tell her we are ready. Tell her it is time to get our toys back." Lisa smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had been pretending to be prey for far too long. "With pleasure," she said. That night, across 17 Velthari worlds, humans received a simple message through channels that did not officially exist. 3 words that changed everything. Phase 2 begins. The cubs were done playing nice. Now they were going to show the Velthari what predators really looked like when they stopped pretending. The recovery operation began on what Earth called a Tuesday. Catherine Moore had chosen the timing carefully. She had spent 5 years building her network, and she was not going to waste it on a poorly planned attack. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to happen at exactly the right moment. She stood in a shielded room deep beneath the surface of a mining colony called Tellus Station. The room was small and crowded. 6 of her most trusted people sat around a metal table, their faces lit by the glow of holographic displays. "The Velthari have a blind spot," Catherine said. She spoke calmly, like a teacher explaining a simple lesson. "They have been dealing with other species for thousands of years. They think they understand how young civilizations behave. They expect us to act like children because that is what we look like to them." Samuel Hughes, her chief intelligence officer, pulled up a display. He was a large man with a gentle face and hands that looked like they belonged to a farmer rather than a spy. Those hands had built the most sophisticated intelligence network humanity had ever created. "They watch for the wrong things," Samuel explained. "They watch for military buildups. They watch for aggressive speeches from our leaders. They watch for the kind of obvious threats that other young species have made in the past." "But they do not watch for this," Catherine said. She gestured, and the display changed. The image showed a web of connections spreading across Velthari space. Each point of light represented a human operative. Each line represented a communication channel. The web was enormous, touching every major Velthari world, every important facility, every critical system. "For 5 years, we have been invisible," Catherine continued. "We worked as servants. We cleaned their floors and served their food. We smiled and bowed and said thank you when they took our things away. And while we did all that, we watched. We learned. We prepared." The others in the room nodded. They knew the plan. They had helped build it. "Phase 2 has 3 objectives," Catherine said. "First, we recover our confiscated technology. Second, we demonstrate that we are not as helpless as the Velthari believe. Third, we do both of these things without starting a war." "That last part is the tricky bit," said Rachel Torres, the team's tactical specialist. She was a former military officer with short gray hair and scars on her hands from old battles. "The Velthari might see this as an act of war no matter how we do it." "They might," Catherine agreed. "But I do not think they will. The Velthari are practical. They avoid fights they do not need to have. If we show them that fighting us would be costly, they will choose to negotiate instead." "And if you are wrong?" Rachel asked. Catherine met her eyes. "Then we fight." "But I am not wrong." The operation began 6 hours later. Across Velthari space, humans who had been playing the role of simple workers suddenly became something else entirely. On Velthari Prime, a cleaning crew entered Warehouse District 7 at the beginning of their normal shift. The guards barely looked at them. They had seen these same humans every day for years. The cleaning crew pushed their carts through the security checkpoints, submitted to the standard scans, and proceeded to Sub-Level 4. The guards never noticed that the cleaning supplies had been replaced with empty containers. They never noticed the small devices attached to the bottoms of the carts. They never noticed the way the cleaning crew moved differently today, with a purpose and coordination that was not normal for simple laborers. On the mining world of Keth Station, a human maintenance worker named Tony Russo walked into the main power facility to perform routine repairs. He had been doing this job for 3 years. Everyone knew him. Everyone trusted him. Tony smiled at the Velthari supervisor and showed his work order. The supervisor waved him through without a second glance. Why would he suspect anything? Tony was just a human. Humans were harmless. 20 minutes later, the facility's security system experienced a strange error. All the cameras went dark for exactly 4 minutes. The sensors reported nothing unusual. The alarms stayed silent. When the system came back online, everything looked normal. But 3 floors below the surface, a locked storage room was now empty. The weapons and equipment that had been confiscated from human workers at the mine were gone. Similar scenes played out on world after world. Warehouses were emptied. Security systems failed at convenient moments. Human technology that had been collected over 5 years simply vanished. The most impressive part was that nobody got hurt. Not a single Velthari was attacked or injured. The humans did not fight. They did not threaten. They simply took back what was theirs and disappeared. Daniel Price led the main operation on Velthari Prime. He had memorized the warehouse layout that Lisa had provided. He knew every patrol route, every sensor blind spot, every door code. His team moved through the facility like ghosts. Package secured, he reported through his hidden communicator. He stood in a loading bay, watching as crates of human equipment were loaded onto transport vehicles. "We are clearing out now." "Copy that," Lisa's voice replied. 17 worlds reporting success. 0 casualties, 0 alarms. Daniel allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. 5 years of preparation, 5 years of patience, and now, in a single, coordinated operation, they had proven that humans were not the helpless cubs the Velthari believed them to be. But recovering the equipment was only part of the mission. The other part was sending a message. Back on Tellus Station, Catherine watched the reports come in. Everything was going according to plan. Better than planned, actually. The Velthari had been so confident in their control that they had made security weak. They had assumed that no human would ever dare to challenge them. "Phase 2 complete," Samuel reported. "All teams are extracting safely." Catherine nodded. "Good. Now begin Phase 3. Phase 3 was the message. As the human operatives withdrew from Velthari facilities, they left something behind. Small data chips hidden in places where they would eventually be found. Each chip contained the same information. The chips showed the Velthari exactly how blind they had been. They contained maps of Velthari military installations drawn by human servants who had been watching for years. They contained recordings of secret Velthari communications intercepted by human workers who had been listening. They contained analysis of Velthari weaknesses identified by human laborers who had been studying. The message was clear. You thought we were cubs. You were wrong. In his office on Velthari Prime, Ambassador Kethral received the first reports of the operation just as the sun was rising. He listened in growing disbelief as his subordinates described what had happened. His skin, usually a calm blue, flickered rapidly through shades of purple and green. "All of it?" he asked. "Every facility?" Every facility we have checked so far, his aide confirmed. 17 worlds, hundreds of storage locations. All the human technology is gone. Kethrall sat back in his chair. His mind raced through the implications. This was not the behavior of a primitive species. This was not how cubs acted. This was coordinated. This was sophisticated. This was the work of predators who had been hiding their true nature all along. "There is more," his aide said nervously. "They left these behind." Kethrall looked at the data chip his aide placed on the desk. He did not want to see what was on it. He already knew it would be something that changed everything. He was right. As he reviewed the contents of the chip, Kethrall felt something he had not experienced in a very long time, something the Velthari rarely felt when dealing with younger species. He felt afraid. The cubs had grown up, and they had teeth. The High Council of the Velthari Collective met in emergency session 3 days after the human operation. The Great Chamber had not seen this many senior officials since the war against the Keth Empire 2 centuries ago. The air was thick with tension and the flickering colors of distressed Velthari skin. High Counselor Verath stood at the center of the chamber. He was old, even by Velthari standards. His scales faded to a dull gray, but his mind was still sharp. He looked around at his fellow counselors and saw fear on their faces. He did not like what that meant. "Explain to me," Verath said, his voice cold and hard, "how a species we have been managing for 5 years was able to do this." Ambassador Kethrall stepped forward. He had not slept since the incident. His skin showed the stress in waves of sickly green. "High Counselor, the humans deceived us. They pretended to be cooperative while secretly building an intelligence network throughout our space. They used our own assumptions against us." "Our assumptions?" Verath's voice rose. "You mean your assumptions. You were the one who told us they were cubs. You were the one who said they were harmless. You were the one who recommended we treat them like all the other primitive species." Kethrall lowered his head. "I was wrong." "Yes, you were." Verath turned to address the full council. "The question now is what we do about it. The humans have taken back their technology. They have demonstrated capabilities we did not know they possessed. And they have left us messages showing exactly how much they know about our military positions and security systems." A counselor named Yeth spoke up. She was younger than most, with bright orange scales that marked her as a member of the warrior caste. "We should strike first, before they can use what they have learned against us. Our fleet is superior. Our weapons are more advanced. We could end the human threat in a matter of weeks." "Could we?" Verath asked. "Look at the data they gave us. They know where our fleets are positioned. They know our communication codes. They know the patrol routes of our border defenses. If we attack, they will see us coming long before we arrive. Then we change our codes. We move our fleets. We adapt. And how long will that take? How much chaos will it cause? How many other species in the collective will see our confusion and decide this is a good time to cause trouble of their own?" Verath shook his head. "The humans have made attacking them expensive, very expensive. That was their plan." Kethrall spoke again. "They left a communication request with the data chips. They want to negotiate." Verath stared at him. "They steal from us, expose our weaknesses, and then they want to talk?" "Yes, High Counselor. The message was very clear. They do not want war. They want recognition as equals." The chamber erupted in angry voices. The idea of treating humans as equals was insulting to many of the counselors. Humans were supposed to be servants. They were supposed to be grateful for Velthari protection. They were not supposed to make demands. Verath raised his hand for silence. Slowly, the chamber quieted. "I do not like this any more than you do," he said. "But we must be practical. The humans have put us in a difficult position. We can fight them and win, probably, but at great cost. Or we can negotiate and find a solution that does not require us to spend ships and soldiers on a species that was not supposed to be a threat in the first place. They will see negotiation as weakness, Yeth argued. Other species will see it too. Our reputation will suffer. Our reputation will suffer more if we fight a bloody war against a species everyone thought was harmless, Verath replied. The humans have been clever. If we admit that, if we adjust our approach, we show that we are flexible and intelligent. If we react with anger and aggression, we show that we can be manipulated. The debate continued for hours. In the end, the council voted to negotiate. It was not a popular decision, but it was the practical one. The Velthari had not built their empire by being stupid. They had built it by knowing when to fight and when to talk. On Earth, Catherine Moore received word of the Velthari decision. She was in her office in Geneva, surrounded by advisors and communication screens. She allowed herself a small smile. "They will try to trick us," Daniel warned. He had returned to Earth for this moment. "They will agree to some things and try to take them back later. They will look for weaknesses." "I know," Catherine said. "But we have already proven that we can find weaknesses too. That is what this negotiation is really about. Not what we agree to, but what we show them while we are agreeing." "What do you mean?" Catherine stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city of Geneva spread out beneath a gray sky. Millions of people going about their lives, unaware of how close humanity had come to either freedom or war. The Velthari will negotiate in good faith only if they believe we can hurt them. That is how they think. Strength is the only thing they respect. We have shown them some of our strength, but not all of it. During these negotiations, we need to show them more. We need to make them understand that fighting us would cost them more than they can afford. And if they call our bluff? Catherine turned back to face him. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were hard. "It is not a bluff. I have spent 5 years preparing for this moment. We have plans the Velthari cannot imagine. We have allies they do not know about. We have options they have never considered." Daniel studied her face. He had known Catherine for years, but sometimes she still surprised him. "You really think we can win this? Not just the negotiation, everything, the long game." "I think humanity is exactly what the Velthari always feared we could become. They just did not expect it to happen so fast." Catherine sat back down at her desk. "We are predators, Daniel. We have always been predators. The Velthari made the mistake of thinking that meant we would act like animals. They forgot that predators can also be patient. We can wait, we can plan. We can play the long game better than any species in this galaxy." The negotiations began 2 weeks later. Catherine led the human delegation herself. She faced Kethral across a polished table on a neutral station between Earth and Velthari space. Both sides brought advisors and security personnel. Both sides brought hidden agendas and secret plans. "Let me be clear about what we want," Catherine said at the opening session. "We do not want war. We do not want revenge for how you treated us. We want recognition. We want to be treated as an independent power with the same rights and responsibilities as any other member of the galactic community." Kethral's skin flickered with colors that Catherine could not fully read. "You ask for much. 5 years ago, you were a primitive species barely capable of reaching your own moon. 5 years ago, you believed that. You were wrong." Catherine leaned forward. "The question is whether you will make the same mistake again. You can keep thinking of us as cubs who got lucky. You can keep believing that you can control us eventually. Or you can accept the truth and find a way to work with us instead of against us." "The truth?" "The truth is that we were never cubs. We were predators playing a role. We let you take our toys because we knew we could get them back whenever we wanted. We let you think you were in control because it served our purposes." Catherine's voice remained calm, almost friendly. "We are very good at playing roles, Ambassador. We have been doing it for thousands of years. Against each other, mostly. You just happen to be our first outside audience." Kethral was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful rather than angry. "You planned this from the beginning, from the moment of first contact." "We hoped it would not be necessary," Catherine admitted. "We hoped you would see us as equals on your own. But we prepared for the possibility that you would not." "And if we had," Kethral asked, "if we had treated you fairly from the start?" Catherine smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and almost sad. "Then we would have been the best friends the Velthari ever had." "We still could be, if you let us." The negotiations continued for 3 weeks. There were arguments and compromises. There were moments when both sides walked away from the table. There were times when war seemed inevitable. But in the end, they found an agreement. Humanity would be recognized as an independent power. All confiscated technology would be returned. Reparations would be paid for 5 years of exploitation. And the Velthari Collective would treat humans as equals from that day forward. It was not perfect. Both sides gave up things they wanted. Both sides accepted terms they did not like. But it was peace. It was a beginning. As Catherine signed the final documents, she caught Kethral's eye. The Velthari ambassador's skin had settled into a calm blue, but there was something new in his expression. Something that looked almost like respect. "You know this is not over," he said quietly. "I know," Catherine replied, "but it is a good start." 10 years passed after the signing of the treaty. The galaxy changed in ways that nobody had predicted. Humanity spread across the stars like water flowing through cracks in stone. They built colonies on worlds the Velthari had considered worthless. They established trade routes that connected species who had never dealt with each other before. They made friends in unexpected places and turned enemies into partners. Daniel Price stood on the observation deck of a human starship, watching a planet grow larger in the viewport. He was older now, his hair touched with gray, but his eyes were still sharp. He had spent the last decade as a military commander, protecting human interests in a galaxy that was still learning to take humanity seriously. "Approaching New Geneva," his navigator reported. "Landing clearance received." Daniel nodded. New Geneva was the center of human power now. A young world transformed into a bustling city in less than a decade. It was proof of what humans could accomplish when they stopped playing roles and started building something real. He was here for a reunion. 10 years since the treaty. 10 years since humanity had demanded its place among the stars. Catherine had called everyone together to mark the occasion. The landing was smooth. Daniel walked down the ramp into warm sunlight and found Lisa Grant waiting for him. She was a senior intelligence officer now, responsible for keeping humanity informed about threats both obvious and hidden. She smiled when she saw him. "You look old," she said. "You look older," he replied. They embraced like the old friends they were. Catherine was waiting in a conference room overlooking the city. She had aged well, her hair silver now, but her eyes as sharp as ever. Samuel Hughes sat beside her, along with Rachel Torres and a dozen other faces from the original operation, the people who had helped humanity earn its freedom. 10 years, Catherine said when everyone had arrived. "Hard to believe." "Harder to believe how much has changed," Samuel replied. He pulled up a display showing a map of human-controlled space. It was much larger than the tiny foothold they had held 10 years ago. "We have colonies on 47 worlds, trade agreements with over 100 species, a military capable of defending our interests against anyone in this sector." "And enemies," Rachel added. Her voice was calm but serious. The Velthari have not forgotten what we did. They smile and trade with us, but I see the looks on their faces. They are waiting for us to make a mistake. Of course they are, Catherine said. We embarrassed them. We made them look foolish in front of the entire galaxy. They will want revenge eventually. That is just how predators think. So we prepare, Daniel said. We keep building. We keep learning. We make sure that when they come for us again, we are ready. Catherine nodded. That is exactly right. But I did not call you here to talk about threats. I called you here to celebrate. 10 years ago, we were a species that the Velthari thought they could control. Today, we are a power they have to respect. That happened because of the people in this room, because of the sacrifices you made, because of the roles you played. She stood and raised a glass. The others followed. To the cubs who grew up, she said, and to the galaxy that learned to fear our teeth. They drank together. For a moment, the weight of responsibility lifted. They were not commanders and spies and diplomats. They were just friends who had been through something impossible together. After the toast, Daniel found himself standing alone with Catherine by the window. The city spread out below them, full of life and energy and hope. Do you ever wonder if it could have been different? He asked. If the Velthari had treated us fairly from the start? Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes. I think about the species we could have been if we had not needed to fight for everything, if we had been welcomed as equals instead of treated as pets. Would we have been better? Different. Not better or worse. Just different. She turned to face him. But that is not the universe we live in. We live in a universe where the strong take from the weak, unless the weak prove they are not weak at all. The Velthari taught us that lesson. We should thank them for it. Thank them? Catherine smiled. It was the smile of someone who had seen too much to be surprised by anything anymore. They made us better, Daniel, stronger, more unified. Before they came, humanity was divided. We fought each other over land and resources and ideas. The Velthari gave us a common enemy. They gave us a reason to work together. And when we beat them at their own game, they gave us confidence. You make it sound like they did us a favor. Maybe they did, without meaning to. Catherine looked back at the city. The galaxy is full of species like the Velthari, ancient, powerful, certain of their superiority. They look at younger species and see threats to be controlled or resources to be used. They never imagine that those young species might surprise them. And we surprised them. We did. And we will keep surprising them. Every species that thinks they can put humanity in its place. Every empire that thinks we are too young or too weak or too primitive. We will surprise them all. Daniel thought about everything they had accomplished, the lies they had told, the risks they had taken, the price they had paid. It had all led to this moment. Standing in the capital of human space, looking out at a future that belonged to them. What happens next? He asked. We do what we have always done. We adapt, we learn, we grow. Catherine put her hand on his shoulder. The Velthari will come for us again someday, or someone else will. There is always someone who thinks they can take what we have built. And when they come, we will be ready. Because we are predators. Because we are human. And humans never stop fighting for what is theirs. Far across the galaxy, in his private chambers on Velthari Prime, Ambassador Kethrall looked at a report on human expansion. His skin flickered through shades of blue and purple as he read the numbers. 47 colonies, 100 trade partners, a military that grew stronger every year. He remembered the first time he had met Catherine Moore. He remembered thinking she was just another primitive, another cub playing with toys. He remembered how wrong he had been. They are still growing, his aide observed. Yes, Kethrall agreed. They will keep growing. Until they are bigger than us. Until they are stronger than us. It is what predators do. Should we do something? Kethral considered the question. The Velthari had options. They could try to slow human growth through trade restrictions. They could fund rival species to cause problems. They could even start a war if they thought they could win. But every time they tried to push the humans down, the humans pushed back harder. Every time they tried to take something away, the humans found a way to take it back. The cubs had become something far more dangerous than cubs. They had become competition. No, Kethral finally said. We do nothing. We watch. We wait. And we hope that when the humans finish growing, they remember that we could have been their friends. His aide looked surprised. You think they would choose friendship over revenge? I think humans are unpredictable. That is what makes them dangerous, and that is what might also save us. Kethral turned away from the report. The cubs lost their toys. They found them again. They lost them again. And through it all, they never forgot who they were. They never stopped being predators. He walked to his window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was building its future, a future that the Velthari had tried to control and failed. A future that belonged to the species that had played the longest game in galactic history. We made a mistake, Kethral said quietly. We thought we were the hunters. We did not realize that we were being hunted all along. The stars twinkled in the darkness. Cold, distant, indifferent to the rise and fall of empires. But somewhere among those stars, the predator cubs were growing up, and the galaxy would never be the same. The end.